I'm John Sipher.
And I'm Jerry O'Shea.
Between us, we have over 60 years of experience as clandestine officers in the CIA, serving in high-risk areas all around the world.
Part of our job was creating conspiracies, like being undercover, to deceive our adversaries.
Now, we're going to use that experience to investigate the conspiracy theories everyone's talking about, as well as some you may not have heard.
Could these be true, or are we being manipulated?
Find out now on Mission Implausible.
We're really pleased today to have Stephanie Marsh, actor, director, activist, entrepreneur, and known, my daughter loves you, known for your role as Assistant District Attorney Alex Cabot on the long-running hit TV series Law and Order SVU. But Stephanie, you're a lot more. In your capacity as a global activist, you advocate for women's rights with a focus on reproductive rights, access to education, securing freedom from sexual violence, and legal representation. You're on the board of the Ponzi Foundation, not Ponzi, Pansy Foundation, One Kid World. Yeah, that's right. Two African and that helping kids in third world countries. And you served on the board of Planned Parenthood Global. You're also a member of the board of advisors for Northwestern University School of Communications. So, Stephanie, welcome. Impressive.
Thank you. I really like how I sound through the bio that you have. It's
Well, even more impressive
some
is
publicist wrote it.
Even more impressive, you're now on Mission Implausible podcast. I think that goes.
Yeah, you could put that down on your bio now. Yeah,
A CIA adjacent, an analyst.
Oh, yeah.
A consultant.
So the analysts are screwing things up now, so you don't want to be an analyst. They seem to get everything wrong. They get Russia wrong, they get Venezuela wrong. So like, you got to be like us. You got to be an operative.
All right, Stephanie, let's start with one of your failures, one of your great failures. So in 2019, you starred on a Comedy Central sort of small movie that talks about how Donald Trump loses the 2020 election and then goes into a tailspin and is forgotten by the world. You played Ivanka Trump. You got it wrong. What happened? I thought you Hollywood really guys understood the world. You were manipulating everything.
Oh, we're manipulative and optimists and not real operators. We're not in the field. I think so much of, it's like dress for the job you want to get, write for the future you hope will happen. It didn't. I don't know if that is a ratings problem or a writing problem or an America problem, but is that not what happened? And
that didn't last.
It did not go down that way.
No, but you were a great Ivanka Trump, by the way. I thought you
I was in makeup for about 17 years. Thank you very much. She's a very beautiful woman, and she's has a very specific manner about her. So it did take some time. I actually think, and I don't think she does this anymore, but I watched a lot of video of her at the time, and I thought for a long time she chews gum, probably to keep herself, fresh, and puts it on the side. And then when she talks and does an interview and keeps it kind of back here and then brings it back out. So I did that on a couple of takes and I sounded more like her, but to do that effectively on camera, you have to have done it a lot. So I just want anybody who's paying attention to go back and look at early Ivanka and see, because you can see she's pulling a piece of gum back there.
See, that's the kind of stuff you get from a professional actor. Yeah.
So the show deals with conspiracy theories, and for most of my adult life, the charge was that Hollywood is full of secret lefties, right? And there's all these lefty conspiracy theories to turn us into, I don't know, whatever it is you Hollywood elites, and of course we East Coast elites want the rest of the country to be. I don't see that anymore, right? In fact, I see a lot of the opposite, especially with cutting comedians who are critical of the administration or of conservative. So what's your sense of, what's the conspiracy now going on in Hollywood? Are the lefties out and sort of something else is in, or what's the sense?
The biggest casualty of this whole thing is comedy. Everybody was so afraid to be canceled that they just stopped writing comedy. You could not put The Office on air today, and it is such a good show. I mean, it's excellent, but you couldn't put that on TV. You couldn't put All in the Family on TV. You couldn't put The Golden Girls on TV. I mean, there's so many things that people would run really far away from right now. So if I will say the one good thing, you have to believe that the pendulum swings both ways and lands in the middle. The one good thing about the backlash to all of the value, the performative behavior and liberal censorship and, the kind of values signaling, the one good thing about the backlash to that is that maybe we can find funny again because nothing's funny.
It's something to hope for. Yeah.
It really is. My money's on funny because that's the one thing that works all the time.
So we've, as John said, we've got this company and we're trying to at least understand and maybe semi break into this world, but in a way to bring espionage to an audience with more authenticity, sort of the way it is. Like Bond and Bourne, they're great, but they're superheroes, right? They're one-dimensional sort of people, and we enjoy those kind of things. But one thing we find over and over in Hollywood, and it's not a conspiracy, but it's really Hollywood struggles to understand other venues outside of itself, right? As I've got a lot of police in my family, and they watch police stuff, and they're like, "Yeah, that's not the way it works." And including even SVU. I'm sorry, it was like, "Yeah, that would never happen," right? And I've got friends in the military, and they're like, and our friends in CIA, and who the formers and people still on the inside, people on the outside always ask us, like, what's the best show about espionage? And the real answer is we struggle to come up with one. And I'll give you with one example, and then we can move on to other criticisms. But we talked about this one operation that we knew of sort of in general. And the writers are like, "Oh, that's really cool." And it has to do with people taking big risks, and something bad happens, but then it turns out to be okay. And they're like, "Okay." And then basically they rewrite it. And it starts out with two people falling into bed together, right? Who don't know each other, who just meet, who are on an operation. Then there's a car chase scene and an explosion. And it's like, that's it, right? It's like, well, there was, no explosions and no love scenes.
To what you've seen on TV before.
They took all of the spy out of it and put all of the
well, yeah, but it's sort of
back in.
It's art imitating life, right? And so I don't know. That's one of the people I was asking.
Imitating art.
Art imitating. Yes, it is. And I was wondering, what's your sense of working so long with SVU? What's the trade-off in the industry between, or the conspiracy between making it entertaining for an audience, which is understandable. You got to do that because most police work is filling in forms, and and making it authentic, giving a sense of the real world.
I think that's a mistake on whoever okays the shows in the end, right? I think audiences are much smarter than people give them credit for.
I agree.
And I believe all the content that you were talking about is something that people want to see. And so when a good show comes out, generally, it's because it is it's coming from a more authentic place, right? That's what resonates with people. And so everybody hand rings and, how do we find a successful show? And how do we find a good writer? Just write what's true and write it well and believe that the audience will be there, because they will be. And I think the dumbing down of things,
the people who approve shows are worried that if it doesn't work, they're going to lose money and get fired. And they often are the children of big shots, right? And so they want to do something essentially that they've seen before because they know they won't get in too much trouble because it made money before, so they'll make money again.
I call it, what about the talking dog? Like if there's a show or a movie about a talking dog, an executive sees that and they say, well, what if we added a talking dog? It's a show about nurses or something.
Where's our talking dog?
Yeah, we need a talking dog. Which I think is why when you get first generation Netflix, those people were bold, right? They took chances. They would take a swing and they produced great viewing. I want to say TV. It is TV. They produced great TV as a result. So when you get people who are willing to take a chance and maintain creative control, the product is almost always better. And I just said this to my husband the other day. The 3 best jobs I've ever had were Law and Order SVU, my small role in Death of a Salesman on Broadway, and my small roles, 2 roles working with Ava DuVernay on Origin and at a show called Naomi. And that is really because I was working for 3 different people, Dick Wolf, Bob Falls, and Ava DuVernay, who maintained an incredible amount of creative control, were very, very insistent that their product, as they saw it, was the thing that America watched. Whether it's accurate or not, it has in terms of SVU, it certainly has a tone and an identity, and it's really because the person at the helm refuses to be overrun by the decision makers in the offices.
Right. Yeah.
And those are always the best projects.
Yeah, it doesn't have
Always.
to be a documentary, but it's got to have this
No.
flow through of authenticity, especially with the characters, right? You know,
It has to have a vision from a creator who is allowed to put that vision into motion without too much meddling. Because when the message gets mixed and when you add too many ideas, it's decision by committee is how you come up with a
Camel.
giraffe that can't walk.
Yeah, that's right. No, exactly right. So, in your most famous role, obviously, you played stories about sexual violence and those kind of things, and now obviously you work on those issues in your activism. How did playing those things affect you personally and make you involved in this, or were you always, active in that area?
It, that's a good. I get asked this question, and I would say to some degree I was always involved because I'm the fourth generation. My great grandmother, not my grandmother, but my great grandmother founded Planned Parenthood of West Texas in 1938. It wasn't called that at the time, but it became that. And so to some degree, it's always been a part of my life, but there is no question that working on the show for as long as I did informed a lot of my decision making moving forward in terms of how I would spend my time when I was not acting and how I would utilize my voice insofar as anybody cares to listen to it. It is it imprinted in a way that has been remarkable for me.
And there's no
Yeah.
Planned Parenthood in Texas anymore, is there?
There's no
Didn't
that's
didn't they get
right.
rid of it?
It's uh, effectively Planned Parenthood. There is a Planned Parenthood, a chapter. It's a Planned Parenthood of Greater Texas, and it is run beautifully by a group of warrior people, and they're doing a fantastic job. But it's a very challenging environment in which to operate, for sure.
Yeah. And moving into certainly not lighter, heavier territory. Planned Parenthood itself is the focus of target victim of a lot of conspiracy theories, and dangerous ones, including the Vance Bolter, the shooter of the Speaker of the House in Minnesota, um, on his hit list of people he intended to kill after the Democratic Speaker of the Minnesota State House were Planned Parenthood seniors, right? Is they were on his hit list, and I'll go there. The president has come out. The president has come out and with baseless and malicious conspiracy theories about Tim Walz, saying that Tim Walz was in on this, right? Was in on this murder of this House official to hide, monies from Somali daycare centers. And so I don't know where to start with that, but conspiracy theories that mix politics and societal issues like Planned Parenthood are especially dangerous. And as a former agency officer, this is something that we saw a lot in places like Africa and the Middle East. We never had to deal with those inside the United States, and we are now. I'm sort of at a loss as to know how to pursue that.
Isn't that amazing how many steps backward we've gone? I mean, it's really kind of shocking. Um, no, I hate to sound all. There's nothing more annoying, especially in today's climate, than a woke feminist actor, blah blah blah. Nobody wants to hear it, and I don't particularly want to spout it. But I will say, women's bodies have been a war ground for a long time, and that's not new, right? Um, and it continues, and it makes a good story. Look, sex sells W- in whatever form it sells, and this is a way of putting sex into a story.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the woke business of Hollywood. I mean, we did see it when we first started, Jerry and I. People would always, try to change a character so it fit with more sort of liberally things, and that was generally fine in our world. Men and women both do the work. So if you want to make the characters women instead of men, that's easy enough. But I see it now a little bit that they're almost scared politically, like, oh, we don't want to make the Russians the bad guys, or maybe Venezuela should be the bad guy. Maybe,
Right.
for a while, a few years ago, it was like, don't say anything bad about China because our money's coming from China. Hollywood, like almost overemphasizes what they think to try to avoid political stuff. And in fact, like you said, if they just focus on making good stories with good characters, people
Yeah,
would
you don't have to
watch it rather
always
than
touch the third
worrying
rail.
about this craziness.
Stop. Don't work from what you think the audience wants back in. Write your good story. It'll catch.
I'd like to think so.
I know.
Yeah,
If it can get there,
and
if the powers that be let it get there to the
yeah,
audience, I mean.
and going back to that, I'll go back to the heavy stuff again. So serving in places in the third world. So I spent a lot of time in Afghanistan, and I spent a lot of time in Iraq. And ISIS, when it overran the Yazidi communities in northern Iraq, that's what they engaged in, right? They brought back sex slavery, and you know, I one of the things I'm most proud about, and as being a former CIA officer, is pushing back on ISIS, right? Diminishing their capacity to do that, and the same with Taliban. With what they brought back with women's rights, what they brought back with the lack of any women's rights was something that is and continues to be horrific. And so looking back at least on our careers, some of the things that we feel best about was bringing in what we thought to be human rights attributes, as people in the audience may say, CIA officers, what do they care about human rights? Actually, we cared a lot, and it was pretty core to what got us up in the morning. I've got 3 daughters, right? How could it not be? So yeah, this is soapbox I'm on, but I just wanted to throw that in, that in our careers in the agency, that was something that we were also, more involved in than you might think.
I think I'm not surprised, but I'm really interested in that, because when you're working in if you're in the field, you're embedded in the most everyday sense, right? Like you are in contact with people on the ground living their real lives, their real normal lives. And so any kind of effect or impression you can make in that situation has really serious roots. You can pass all the laws you want about, well, rape is illegal and you have a right to an abortion, or I don't even want to say the word all the time because it's not always about abortion, right? But you can pass any law you want. And anybody can get up there and stand in front of a microphone and feel really proud of themselves. But it's what happens on the ground every day that's what people really live and experience. That's really what life is. And if you're in the field and you're able to affect some change, if it's one family, if it's 3 families, if it's a neighborhood, if it's a movement like ISIS, that is a lot more progress than most of us wearing any colored ribbon on our shoulders.
Well, I mean, sometimes, so if you work essentially for CIA, your job is to collect information intelligence to help policymakers make better intelligence. And there's times and cases and people you work with where you can meet, actually do good work on an ethical grounds and help Americans stay safe. And, but our goal is not just to go out and try to do ethical things where we are. We work for the United States government, but there are other parts of the U.S. government when it works together that all works well. So like one of the things I find most heinous about what's happened politically in the last year is the destruction of USAID. We could never use USAID cover. We wouldn't do that kind of stuff. They're doing different work than we in CIA are doing, but they're doing really good work. They're doing important work. They're helping people on the ground. They're solving health issues and problems, things that actually affect people in America's soft power around the world. And we see that benefits us, because when those countries see that the U.S. actually cares about their people and are doing good work, it helps us find those sources that maybe want to work against bad actors and help us. So it all sort of works together. So the destruction of USAID was a terrible thing. And we've just sort of passed off and forgotten about it. But you're talking probably hundreds of thousands of people dying over the next few years because of that.
I've been kind of amazed and horrified by a lot of things in the last few years, but nothing comes close to when that happened, because I happened to be launching a social enterprise called Gal Care in Kenya. And I have been going, this is in Western Kenya, in a county called Homa Bay, which has the highest rate of HIV of any country in Kenya. I mean, it didn't. And what I found so enraging and so frustrating and just so sad was that they had largely really addressed the problem. People were getting medication that worked, and it worked for mothers who were pregnant. It worked for people who already had it. Like AIDS and HIV, it was really in a place that was vastly better than it was and manageable. And we had the medication and it was being distributed, and then they just stopped handing it out. I mean, that's just cruel and unusual. To have medicine in a clinic and then to lock the clinic door and then to just disappear it is to destroy a life in 24 hours. That stuff is time sensitive. when you take it.
And they just oftentimes just left it until it went bad. Like they didn't
until it went bad.
And
there were all these nutrition programs that they were supplementing kids under the age of, it was 5 or 3, and that malnutrition at an early age is a significant determiner of whether or not you have normal development as you grow older, and all kinds of things. Like then that's the cascading effects of that. Like what kind of job can you get? Where can you go? What is your mental development like? They just they had the food, and then the kids stopped getting it. I mean, it's there, and then it wasn't handed out, and that makes me crazy. Like, by the way, I am all for going after some government spending, right? Like, but maybe we could have started with Medicaid fraud or the DOD, or like it feels like there were some bigger, better targets, right?
But actually, the New York Times has done a big stuff on Doge recently, and they didn't save any money. None of that stuff actually saved any money. They put all these false things out there about how many billions they were saving, and it turns out it wasn't. It caused a lot of.
I mean, there wasn't that much. It doesn't cost that much considering what they're doing to begin with. That's the thing, is USAID was not that much money. Massive ROI.
So you're saying we shouldn't give the Argentinian government $40 billion to support their corrupt and inefficient government structure and economy? Is that what you're trying to say?
But only if you're willing to, keep 8 aside so that you can feed children under the age of 3. You know what I mean? Like, if that's what it costs, at least throw that into the pile, right?
I have to say, as someone who spent 3 decades in the U.S. government, I'm trying to understand how those decisions came to be, right? So, is it a conspiracy? Like, generally before, it doesn't count anymore. We would have there would be an interagency process, right? We would bring in DOD, CIA, we'd be minor players, but it would be AID, State Department. Everybody would get in a room and say, okay, if we do this, okay, what is the results of it? What's the good? What's the bad? What's the trade-offs? What's the way we can do this in the best possible, if we're going to save money, the best possible way? What do we want to save? But there was none of this. It was basically, someone just walks in with a meat cleaver. So somewhere there was a meeting someplace, a conspiracy, if you will.
Yeah, it was Elon Musk. It was Elon Musk on Twitter following Twitter trolls and disinformation bots, and he believed fake stuff about USAID and these other things, and then took action on it.
While he was microdosing
so it's conspiracy theories that made its way through social media, which informed the decisions they made. And instead of going to the giant government that had experts that could tell them what's going on, they chose just to act on their own. And the president is still doing that, frankly.
Yeah, it's conspiracy theory.
Has any medium ever been better for spreading a conspiracy theory than social media? Like, is that the best thing that's ever happened to conspiracy theorists everywhere?
I think it is. It used
that
to be.
Stuff goes fast.
If you believe some crazy stuff, you might have to over time, you'd meet someone in your neighborhood who believed it, and a few of you could conspire. Now, if you believe something crazy, you can go online and you could find a community of people who want to believe the same crazy thing.
Yeah, you could live there all the time.
What's the group, Jerry? Was it in Germany that wanted to eat people that found each other online or whatever?
Really?
Yeah. Tell them that story. Tell her that story. Hold on.
God love them. There's someone for everyone, right?
True story. Well, so back in the Middle Ages, like the 1970s, right? If you were inclined to be a cannibal, right, you had no one to reach out to, right? You'd go down to the local bar and, you'd with your buddies, you ever want to gnaw on a knuckle or something like that? And he's like, no. Right. And so if you are one of the 50 people inclined of the, 70 million Germans who wants to be a cannibal, you could never meet the other 69 people. Right. But suddenly with going at social media, it's possible they can meet each other. Well, apparently, Stephanie, there's an even smaller group of people who have this fetish who want to be eaten. Right? That's their thing. Even smaller. It's just a couple of those guys. And so
not surprisingly.
Well, they're Germans. So social media brings these two groups together, right? Which would never have happened, anytime before and so finally, in this great course case, I was in Germany when it happened, the cannibal meets the guy who wants to be eaten, and they get together. And they actually sign a contract because they're Germans. He's like, yeah, this is okay. And they don't eat all of them. They just cut off a piece of them. And they eat it together, but then the guy bleeds to death and dies because the cannibal is not a doctor, right? And so I won't even go what they decide to eat. And
this is a true thing you're telling me, right?
This is a true story. This is a movie. We're going to make the cannibal movie. Hannibal Lecter, you know.
We aren't, but I'll go if you. I'll watch it if you guys make it.
True crime. And so, but it only becomes possible with social media, right? That these sort of crazinesses can actually combine and create something like that. And I think that goes with conspiracy theories too, right? So Stephanie, I want to blame you again for something. So you are on the board of Northwestern University for the School of Communications, right? Well, are all those people, are they looking into communications? Aren't they supposed to be? I don't even know what communications. I had some friends who were communications majors. I could never figure out what they did. But, you know,
Northwestern's a pretty place. So I did an executive course there once. It was really nice.
Could the comms be what happened to comms? So I love the dean of our school. E. Patrick Johnson is his name. And this is something that I shouldn't speak for him, but I think he would say is that a lot of the department is being massively underutilized. You know, one of the things that we're studying in the School of Comms is social media and how it affects people and how people interpret. Do they believe AI? Do they not believe AI? How do they sift through and use critical thinking when they're looking at, you know, whatever source they see online, right? When we choose our own sources, how can we use critical thinking to determine whether or not what we're hearing is nonsense? And there are a lot of really interesting studies about that going on right now. You know, the School of Comms is not as well funded as, say, the School of Engineering, right? Everybody's talking about STEM, STEM, STEM. And I think in this world of misinformation and the purposeful dissemination of misinformation, like we should pay more attention to communications and the critical thinking therein. So this is my low-key way of pleading on behalf of School of Comms for a bigger part of the Northwestern University budget. So that we can get going on that. It's not just STEM. STEM is plenty funded.
Yeah. This podcast will do it. Yeah, the money will rush
I think it's going to catapult us right to the top of the list.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because there's more and more channels of communication, right? So there's all social media. There's a variety of social media. Everyone's got a Substack. Everybody's got a podcast. There's all the different shows, more ways to get information than there ever has been before. But if you go back 30, 40 years, there was 3, 4, 5 television channels and 3, 4, 5 big newspapers where people got information. Now, essentially what happens, despite the fact that there's more of these things, people just narrow down to the one thing that they want to hear. And they actually hear one piece of information from one place. You know, if you watch Fox News, you just watch Fox News. You don't watch other stuff. And so in some ways, even though there's more places to get information, the way it's set up is you go and find the thing that just fits what you want to hear, that gets you excited or whatever, and you stay with that.
Right. We should all be forced to triangulate our information, right?
There you go.
A middle source, a left source, a right source, and then come to your own determination. But
I would push back on that gently. I think that conservative and liberal, I think they can. But then there's the out of bounds part that are like crazy, right?
It's the loonies, the flat earthers.
Well, I'll go there. The Laura Loomers, right? I mean, you know, people who are providing fact-free, hateful, malicious, meant to hurt and divide and polarize and monetize. I don't think they should be part of I mean, I wouldn't ban them, but I don't think they're part of the discussion, because it used to be in the old days when I would be a Republican or a I was never a member of any political party, but because we were in the government, we were completely apolitical.
Yeah.
But you could argue what the marginal tax rate is. Well, I think it should be 40%. No, it should be 20%. Okay, you can have that discussion. But was the election stolen or not? The answer is, look, unless you can provide, and I'm being generous, unless you can provide evidence, you're just making an assertion. This isn't a fact-based conversation, right? This is just, making shit up, right? So
yeah. Well, Walter Cronkite would not say something on the news that had not been backed up by a significant number of evidence, right? Real evidence. You couldn't just say stuff on the news. Now you can just say whatever into whatever channel you want and present it as fact.
And sometimes
totally nuts.
The crazier it is, gets more eyeballs and therefore more money. So it's almost an incentive
it's
to
good
say
TV.
things that are, yeah.
I'm all for
has
dialogue.
good TV.
but you got to have some basic common ground, like elections are how we settle our differences, or, there are, I mean, today is 6th January. Stephen Miller apparently went on the talk shows. I didn't see it, but I read about it, and basically said, we should take Iceland, or we could take Iceland because we're big and we're powerful. And
Greenland or Iceland or both?
Greenland. Well, both. Yeah. Why those Icelanders better watch out, Greenland. And so, but he said that because we're bigger and are more stronger. And that's just being a bully, right? I mean, that's what the Nazis said. That's what Stalin said. I'm bigger. So, fuck you. And I would like to think we're better. Not only A, we're better than that, but B, our society is better off without that, right? I mean, without that, we establish rules on what's fair, and that's what we do, as opposed to.
Dan and I just finished watching the Ken Burns American Revolution, which was
good.
Was outstanding, right? And we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Well, a lot of people don't hold them to be self-evident, or don't want to say that on the air because it's not good TV. Like I said, like, you don't get many eyeballs. So there are a lot of things that I think we took for norms because we assumed we were all buying into the same democracy. And it's really been apparent to me in the last few years how many things we just assumed people would observe certain rules, but they weren't actually rules. So
norms. Yeah, they weren't legalities.
Exactly. So it's not illegal, it's just completely immoral. But that's, again, not illegal. And it's disheartening to see so many people jump on the bandwagon.
And you see from a series like that, and I was just listening, for example, to Rachel Maddow's podcast on the Japanese internment in World War II, among other things, is how many things in our history you did see these frictions. Like there's basis of these problems before that we actually worked on and got past. And then eventually, there's been this up and down in the United States before. And so we're going through one of those phases that we've gone through before, but let's hope, given the fact
it's a phase and it's a pendulum.
It definitely seems to be, I mean, my takeaway from this whole experience watching this documentary was it requires the active participation of all of us.
Yeah.
It requires us to vote. Yep. It requires us to read the news. It requires us to pay attention to who our local judges are. It's only as good as we're willing to make it. So if we're just showing up and yelling at each other, that's not going to work.
So let's go back to the beginning of the podcast here. We cut you off. You were going to ask something. And then Jerry said, no, I want to be in control. That's how I'm an important person.
I'm a dick.
So what? Not always, but yeah. So what did we cut you off? What were you going to ask or say?
Well, okay. I mean, Venezuela. Are we going to talk about Venezuela?
Sure.
I mean, it seems like such a blatant play for oil that I don't. Maybe that's.
But what's funny about Trump is, like, you could tell, like, Rubio, all these people have the standard, like, oh, no, this is about A, B, C, and D. But then they ask he's like, yeah, it's about oil. I talked to the oil companies. They're going to go in, they're going to make it. Like, he just says the stuff. And you could tell all these poor guys that have been going on TV pretending like that wasn't it. Like, oh, sorry.
So to what degree, now that this has happened, and the machinations behind the scenes, to what degree does this embolden Russia to go further into Ukraine, or China to go to Taiwan, or us to go to Greenland? Because while we're at it, does this set off a series of events where we all just agree around the world that it's okay?
That's the concern, isn't it? Like, there's a number of things that President Trump has done, this being the latest, that give that sense that he's of the view that we ought to be back into the spheres of influence, 18th, 19th century view of the world. Like, we control this hemisphere, the Western hemisphere. The Russians can have their area, the central of Eurasia, and Asia will belong to China. And so if you're Xi, you can say, like, yeah, I mean, what is there suggesting that Trump cares about Taiwan or defending Taiwan, especially when he can go take places and why Putin can't take Ukraine? And so that's the logical extension of that. That hasn't been said directly because we're still part of things like NATO and the other agreements, but that's where it seems to be going. And so if I'm one of those people, I don't know if they get to the point where they actually take action on that, but what they're doing is they're seeing the United States taking action to suggest that it's okay. Like, hey, I'm leaving your area. You just stay out of my area.
But I'd add two things. One is, right now it's a kabuki play. We're not running Venezuela. We've done nothing but take away Maduro. The entire apparatus of oppression and incompetence is still in power there. And there's going to be no American. We don't have an embassy there. As an embassy officer, I wouldn't go there right now. I mean, you're going to get kidnapped or killed, right? How long is it going to be before 5 Americans are sitting in a jungle someplace with a gun to their head and guerrillas are saying, "You give us back Maduro, we're going to start shooting these people," right? I mean, we're going in that direction. So we're not putting boots on the ground. We don't actually run the place. All we've done is taken away Maduro. So I think there's going to be. I think what's going to happen is nothing really. I mean, other than a lot of hullabaloo, the current leader of Venezuela, whose father, by the way, kidnapped an American citizen, held him for 3 years, and was tortured to death by the Venezuelan secret police. You think she's, oh yeah, her father was a communist guerrilla who captured a guy, an American businessman, held him for 3 years, got $20 million for him, was eventually caught by the right-wing junta that was close to the U.S. and tortured to death. Her brother is the head of the assembly, the National Assembly. Do you think, I mean, she may be a little more pragmatic in that she's not going to say, "Fuck you, Trump," to his face, but do you think she's going to do anything? And the 30,000 Cubans there are going to allow it to happen and all? Unless we want to go in like in Iraq or Afghanistan, of course, those went real well.
Yeah,
we want to
we
send
made so much money and it went really well.
We made so much money out of those 2 places. Unless we go in to do that, what CEO is going to take 5 engineers and say, "Hey, I want you to go into Venezuela. Let me know how it works out for you." Right? It's not safe. So I don't think anything is. I mean, it's going to be chaotic and ugly, and there may be more shooting and deaths. But unless we go in and put boots on the ground, I don't think there's going to be some major changes. But what do I know? I mean, I thought Hillary Clinton was going to win, right? So
it may amount to a big story and then move on.
Yeah, it's not about the people of Venezuela. Like
right. No.
In fact, we wouldn't put in the duly elected Nobel Peace Prize winning woman. They're saying, no, we want to work with the existing junta because they'll let us have, potentially
she won 70% of the vote, but she has no respect inside the country. But the second thing I would say, more importantly, is to a certain extent, Venezuela is a sideshow. Weirdly, Greenland is more important because Greenland will break NATO, right? So
that's scary.
NATO is there to prevent exactly things like us taking over Greenland, right? It's like it is an attack on a NATO member. And so depending on how, and I think they're fine with doing this, that will be America left alone without real allies. I mean, the impact of Europe cutting itself off from us, which they're not going to want to do immediately. They're going to do it, but basically we've lost all influence in the world if we turn on a NATO ally, and we have no justification. At least with Maduro, we could pretend, oh well, he was running fentanyl. Oh, I mean cocaine. Of course, we just released the head of Honduras, the former president of Honduras, who ran 400 tons of cocaine in the U.S. Right? He's fine.
He was a lot more effective.
Right. And so I think
he was better at drug running.
Greenland, there's a lot more at stake because it means our alliances around the world will be effectively over. I don't know, John, your thoughts?
No, Stephanie, go ahead.
It's like if we kept it to the Western Hemisphere, it would just be our Americas. But if we move east,
yeah, what do we mean?
We spent a lot of time over the last, several decades trying to do away with the view that we were the big bad bully who just did what we wanted in Latin America and Central America.
Whoops.
So that we could develop, relationships, that were mutually beneficial. And now we're just going back and doing the same old thing. It's going to take, if we ever want to get back to that period of time, it's going to take a long time before anybody in this part of the world trusts us again. That's for sure.
Isn't that the biggest drag? Is that it takes 5 seconds to break it and 10 years to rebuild it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So, Stephanie, do you have any CIA questions? Like things that have always, like where we hide the aliens or anything like that? I mean, sort of.
I want to know where we hide the aliens. Do you know?
Okay. There was, I did listen to this and I don't like to pay podcast favorites, but I was listening to a podcast on the Journal and they were talking about the UFO sightings and New Mexico and, the government conspiracy to cover up. So what are your thoughts on that? Because what it sounded like to me is that it boiled down to they were testing a few things and they didn't want people to know about it. And Alien cover felt like pretty good cover because it's a great story and people will talk about it. And the more people pretended they weren't talking about it, the more it only looked like they were really covering up an alien conspiracy. But it sounds like it was weapons testing and they just didn't want to admit it. Any thoughts on that?
Jerry, this is yours, man. Hit it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so there needs to be, that's where the skunk works. That's where they were trying out all the new airplanes and, and the new vehicles. So, I mean, my understanding is that there was a crash and, there was a mix up initially in communications back in like 47, 48 and Area 51, if that's what we're talking about, that the government tried to hide and said it was a weather balloon when it was actually experimental aircraft, which is what you'd expect, right? You don't want the Russians, or the Soviet Union to know what technologies we've got or what we're testing out, right? Is like the fate of the country depends on us being able to defend ourselves. And some secrets need to be kept. And I think then people jumped in, and I think it was probably only 20, 30 years later that, and again, Hollywood, Scully and Mulder really got that going again, right? And got people thinking about it. So I can only laugh. The government can't keep secrets for 70 years with tens or hundreds of thousands of people and nobody knows. Stephanie, if you were to waterboard me right now, I would tell you all about the aliens, right? But
right.
I don't know any. The only aliens I know are Guatemalans, and they're working on, they're working on construction.
It feels like they got such a lucky break that everybody thought it was aliens, and like what a great distraction, right?
Exactly.
Well, it's a great narrative. I mean, I love to think about it too. I mean, I can remember back in high school, Chariots of the Gods. You remember that one? It was like, the Egyptians couldn't possibly have built the pyramids, right? It's like it must have been aliens, right?
Oh. Well, that's not to say I think we're the only thing in the universe, but that doesn't mean it's in Area 51.
We're talking about little green men with big eyes, and I mean,
exactly.
Is there life in the universe? Is there intelligent life in the universe? Is there intelligent life in Washington? I don't know, but
maybe we know they're intelligent because they're not bothering with us. What a waste of time we are.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the same thing for me. I had never. There's 30 years in this. See, we never discussed it or I never heard anything about it. So, maybe the people who work on aircraft or in the military or whatever have more sort of interest in these kind of things. But I tend to be skeptical of that kind of stuff, of alien things.
And I'll jump in and say one of the things that Hollywood always gets wrong, but I get why, because it's cool, is sex in the CIA. Categorically, we don't use like honey traps. We don't use blackmail. We don't use sexual, despite the fact that you've got people as good looking and charming as John and I, right? Who obviously could charm any Olga.
Think what we could have got away with, Jerry.
Think of the raw talent that is completely left on the field.
It's like,
that's criminal.
We don't do that. And we don't do it morally, right? I mean, I got 3 daughters. You go home and, who gets it? And also it just doesn't friggin' work, right? I mean,
well, that's my question. Why not use it? It doesn't work. It's too much trouble. It creates more trouble than it.
Our work is to find people who have access to secrets that are motivated to work with us, keep themselves safe, and give us those secrets that can help Americans stay safe, right? So
long term. Yeah.
So it's a long-term play, and it's based on trust. And so what you want someone to do is be giving you those secrets and hiding themselves from their government or whatever, and be motivated to do it. If you put them in a situation where you're using blackmail or sex to get that, they're going to want to get out of that relationship as soon as they can, or the trust has been lost there. And so you're not going to be able to maintain that trust over time with those kind of people. And so essentially we want to build that relationship so it's mutually beneficial and it goes for a long time, where rather than sort of put people in uncomfortable situations, maybe have them give us something because they might get in trouble, and then look to get out of that as soon as they can.
Or even if it's just romantic. Okay, the first 6 months are over. Now what? Now that person's just a lit fuse, right? You're pissed off at each other. You don't have any long-term trust. And now they know a lot of stuff.
or you used me. I'm gonna fuck with you, right? I'm gonna, and then like
we're all doing that. We all did that in one relationship or another. It actually sounds like a terrible use of resources and time.
It does. And there was this great story. Indonesia or Malaysia, the leader there went to Moscow.
Sukarno, you're talking about.
Sukarno,
Indonesia.
Indonesia, yes. So he ends up in the 60s. He ends up in bed with like a beautiful woman or two beautiful women, and the Russians are in there taking pictures of this. And he goes back to Indonesia, and the KGB resident shuffles over and shows him these pictures, thinking he's got like blackmail. And Sukarno, the story goes through this and goes, oh yeah. He says, can you blow this one up for me? And I'll take 3 of these. I want to give them to my friends. Like, yeah, that didn't work. Right. I mean, it's like you got to blackmail me with this.
You guys have proof of it. I got it. Yeah.
Right.
Whoops. Didn't work.
Yeah. So no, we don't do that. But Hollywood loves that. Right.
Sex sells.
It's sex sells. Yeah. Sex
sells. Whether it's, good or bad, and whatever you conceive of that to be, any story that has a sexual element to it is likely to attract some eyeballs.
Yeah. So Stephanie, I've got one other thing. So you are, I hope I can say this, you are, if not, we can cut it out. You're an investor in this great bar in New York, Temple Bar, right?
Yes.
Well, you used to be anyway, but I want to say
a teeny tiny percentage, but
anyway,
I am.
Doesn't matter. It is a spy watering hole. So I will say I had to take back, when I was still inside, I had to take back a Middle Eastern potentate. Well, he was just a general. And I had to take him back to New York, and we were going to talk with him. He was not an asset. He was just someone who liked to work with us. And we were to take him back to New York, where we would sit down. He wanted to go to New York. He didn't want to go to Washington. And, the FBI met him, and people from Washington had met him, and he wanted to go to Temple Bar. And so I have been to your restaurant and did spy shit in there. And
Isn't it perfect for that?
Yes. And we didn't even get a corner table. We tried to do that. We couldn't. But I wanted to say it was a great meal.
Nice and dark.
For any spies out there still in New York, Temple Bar, great place to go for your spy meeting.
Where is it? New York?
It's on just north of Houston on Broadway, or is it Lafayette? It's Broadway. No, it's Lafayette. I can't believe I don't know. Anyway,
it's on Lafayette, right?
I can find it in the dark. Yeah, it's on Lafayette. Thank you. It's a corner. You get free popcorn. The lights are low. The music's just loud enough that you can't hear the people next to you talking.
Perfect for spies. Yeah.
I would love to reach the spycraft audience in order to promote one of the most established action-oriented bars in New York. Why not?
And you'll always know who the real spy is, because his back is to the wall and his view is towards the door, right?
His views of the room.
Yeah.
Or her view,
That's right.
as it
Which
were.
is half the people in the bar then, Jerry.
My definition, half the people. Well, there you go. See, it's so safe if you're a spy.
That's right. So great bar, great place for spies to hang out.
I'm so glad you liked it. I really do love Temple Bar.
Yeah, we'll get together in New York, and you can buy us a drink, and we'll tell you like mostly true spy stories. But yeah,
many teeny tiny martinis. They are teeny.
Sorry,
I'll confess that.
It's probably for the best. Listen, we don't want to take up much of your time. It's just like so good to talk to you. We want to be able to leave enough space we can talk in the future again more about things. But it's so great to have you on here with us.
How additive I was, but it was really fun to listen. I would like to discuss what's happening in Africa at some point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because we talk about Asia and the Western Hemisphere and Eurasia, but what about Africa? There's a lot going on over there.
There is a lot going on.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of things, the Chinese are investing very heavily there.
Yeah.
The U.S., at least under the Obama administration and Biden administration, was trying to engage more in Africa. It's a place that's always batted under its weight, and there's so much there. And right now you see things like they're attacking, people in the administration is going after Nigeria and a number of other places. Jerry spent a number of years living in Africa and working in Africa.
I'm sure you have plenty to say about it. I have learned recently in the last year that 60% of the population of the continent of Africa is under the age of 30. So, man, that feels like the future.
Yeah. I mean, Nigeria it's going to be like the fourth most populous country in the world soon, right? I mean, or third.
And they have some oil.
Yeah, they do. And I guess we're going in guns blazing, right? It's like, but I will say,
is that our backup plan to Venezuela?
guess so. I guess so. But I will say, in Africa, because we have access to targets like North Koreans and Russians and Chinese, like we don't have in places like Berlin and Paris, it is probably more African capitals are more active on the espionage front, batting way over their mixing metaphors, batting over their weight. Yeah. Africa is, we can certainly talk about Africa. We can talk about espionage in Africa and some of the crossovers between espionage and human rights, right? Where they collide and where they collaborate, with who you back and regimes and so forth. Let's do that, especially South Africa right now too.
Oh, I would love to. If you would have me again, I feel like I'm more of an adored audience, but I love doing it.
It'd be fun to talk about. There's plenty to talk about there. I mean, what's happening in Sudan is one of the worst things happening in the world, and it's going to affect us, even though we're not paying attention to it right now.
I will say this, and I won't take up more of your time either, but it's interesting when I try to triangulate my news, get it from a bunch of different sources. And so I listen to BBC NewsHour often, and it's just amazing how much more news there is in the world than we bother to hear about.
Exactly.
I mean, you want to find out what's happening in South Sudan, don't listen to any American news because nobody's covering it.
I remember when I was young being told, like, a government could have two choices. You could either invest in and create an intelligence service, or you could read The Economist. And so, like,
that's true.
The British, the BBC, and The Economist, they cover all this stuff that and you realize, like, U.S. news doesn't delve into any of it. And it's important things going on around it.
I'm glad they didn't fire us and do that.
Might be better now to get rid of it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much. It's so great to talk to you.
You guys are
we'll
great.
We'll be talking to you again, hopefully,
so
and we come up with a good TV show to make together.
Yeah.
Oh, I have no doubt.
Oh, yeah.